morning, my dear students. Today I will continue the second part of document 1 related to the nervous system and organized network of chapter 1, nervous communication. By the end of this video, the student must be able to cope with the following objectives. Specify the main functions of the nervous system in humans. List the parts of the nervous system in humans. List the organs of protection of the brain and spinal cord. Identify the structure of a nerve cell. And finally, compare the 3 types of neurons according to their shape and function. At the beginning, we all know that the nerve message always traverses the neurons, and we have studied in the previous videos that the neuron is the main functional and structural unit of the nervous system, which conducts nerve messages or impulses. Such neuron has 3 major parts: dendrites, cell body, and axon with terminal buds. Here comes up the following question: in what direction does the nervous message propagate at the level of the neuron? Remember that there are 2 types of fibers in the neurons. At the level of the first type of fibers, the dendrites are short and numerous, convey signals from their tips toward the rest of the neuron. The signals may come from a sensory cell or from an interneuron. At the level of the second type of neuron fiber, the axon conducts signals toward another neuron or toward an effector. Many axons are long that may stretch from lower part of spinal cord all the way down to muscles in the toes. So the dendrites conduct the nerve message towards the terminal buds along the axon in one direction only, and that is why the nervous message along the neuron is unidirectional. This ensures that the nerve message propagates in a unique direction or one-way direction as shown in the figure. Here is the schematic pathway. The message starts from the dendrites to the cell body, to the axon, and finally to terminal buds or terminal arborization. The sensory input is the conduction of signals from the sensory receptors to integration centers or nerve centers. Here it goes. The dendrites of a sensory neuron transmit sensory information from the receptor organ to the nerve center. This indicates that the sensory message is always centripetal or afferent, knowing that centripetal and afferent have the same meaning. The motor output is the conduction of signals from the integration centers to the effectors. The axon of the motor neuron transmits motor information from the nerve center to the effector organ. This indicates that the motor message is always centrifugal or efferent, knowing that the centrifugal term and efferent have the same meaning. Now, I would like you to know the constituents of a nerve and ask the following question: what is a nerve? First of all the nerves within the nervous system constitute the peripheral nervous system. And these nerves allow communication between the central nervous system, basically brain or spinal cord, and the rest of the body like skin, muscles, glands, and other organs. The adjacent figure refreshes your knowledge about the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system as well as their constituents. Now we can raise the following question: what is the nerve made up of? If we take a look at a cross-section of a nerve, we observe bundles of nerve fibers supported by connective tissue and a network of blood capillaries. These nerve fibers represent axons in the nervous system, where each nerve fiber in reality is an axon. This figure shows the elements of the reflex arc and the pathway traverses by the nerve impulse through these elements. We must know that the interneuron lies in the gray matter of the spinal cord, which allows integration of sensory messages into motor messages. Now we look at some details pertaining to spinal cord. In reality, these details are related to the constituency of the spinal cord, where the spinal cord is an elongated white cylindrical cord that transmits nerve messages from the brain to different parts of the body and vice versa, which means in both directions. And it also performs its own function in the development of reflexes without brain intervention. At this moment, and by observing a cross-section of the spinal cord, we realize the following facts. An outer white matter that surrounds an inner gray matter. A sensory neuron with bulging represents the spinal ganglion sensory input, and a motor neuron without bulging responsible for motor output. Again, an interneuron in a gray matter responsible for integration of sensory input into motor output. And finally, a mixed peripheral spinal nerve, which is basically made up of sensory and motor nerves together. When it comes to the constitution of the gray and white matters, basically the gray matter is made up of cell bodies of multipolar neurons, as you can observe on the figure, and cytoplasmic prolongations. And basically these prolongations are dendrites. While the white matter is made up of myelinated nerve fibers or axons, which in fact they comprise the white matter. Here comes up the big question about the reflex act. Why do you withdraw your hand when you touch a candle flame? Frankly, we should primarily know that the hand withdrawal after a flame touching is an involuntary action directed and controlled by the spinal cord, and this is known as reflex act. Now, what is a reflex? Simply, we have to know what is a reflex. It is an involuntary, automatic, and rapid response to a stimulus controlled by spinal cord without brain intervention. So, how do the stimulated sensory organs transmit information to the muscles in order to control movement? Look at the chart of the reflex arc. The elements intervene in the reflex act refer to a reflex arc. The stimulus is an event capable or responsible for creating or initiating a nervous message. Now we look at the elements in the reflex arc. The first element is the pain receptor, which happens to be the skin. Second one is the sensory afferent neuron that conducts the sensory messages. And the third one is the interneuron in the spinal cord responsible for integration of sensory messages. The fourth one, the motor afferent neuron, conducts the nerve message. And finally, the effector organ or muscle that displays the response by a specific movement, which is basically contraction or relaxation of the muscle. At this moment, we can display the pathway of the nervous message during a reflex. Now, the receptors or sense organs detect the stimulus and send the nerve message to the central nervous system, basically to the brain or spinal cord, via sensory neuron. And the central nervous system, in turn, sends the nerve message to the effector organs that are basically muscles or glands via the motor neuron. Follow up with me in this application. Trace the pathway of the nervous message when the sole of the foot steps on a nail. Sole of the foot is the bottom of the foot. This is the chart, and this is the answer. Now list the elements involved in this case where the stretching of the neuromuscular spindle results in the contraction of this muscle. Here it goes.